Hey, everybody. Awesome. So good to see all of you guys in the online event. I know the country is starting to opening up, and all of us would be looking forward to do all of these events in person. So first of all, thank you so much for coming to this event, and we are really excited for this Spark Festival event. Why Australia needs more migrapreneurs, and we're excited to have you guys. But before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and recognize their continuing connection to land, waters, and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures and elders, both past and present. Let us walk together and take care of earth and water as one. We are thrilled to have the amazing guests, Marjorie, Dilpreet, and Ellen. And we're just going to have, this is going to be a very casual conversation. So we would love if you guys want to be a part of the conversation, you guys have any questions, just feel free to pop it in the chat section so that, I will just cover those questions while we are having this chat around migrantpreneurship. Also, if you guys find a specific point that you resonate with or relate with the most, then feel free to write that in the chat section. At the end of the day, we want this to be a productive conversation. So just keep the chat as active as possible. That's the goal. Welcome, guys. All three of our speakers are champion of promoting migrantpreneurship in Australia. And I believe instead of me introducing all of them, I think the justice would be, you guys introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience with migrantpreneurship. So why don't we start with Marjorie? You're on mute, so let's do it.
Hi, everyone. So thanks for the introduction, Dev. And just before I introduce myself, I just want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on, which is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, also known as Redfern, which is the birthplace of urban Indigenous activism. So this is and always will be Aboriginal land. So I just want to pay most respects to any past, present, and emerging traditional custodians. So for those of you, most of you don't know me, I'm Marjorie Tan-Chavez. I'm the founder and director of Welcome Merchant. It's a social enterprise that elevates refugee-powered businesses in Australia. So how we do that is, our mission is to elevate refugee-powered businesses in Australia through curated events, free social media marketing support, and merchandise partnership as well. And we also have an online directory. So it's the only one that is like the only consolidated platform for all refugee-powered businesses in Australia. And yeah, I mean, how Australian consumers love supporting like the battler. So that's how, I guess, Welcome Merchant came about. So we offering this, the entrepreneurs, the opportunity and Welcome Merchant to promote themselves anyway. And that's it.
Yeah, thank you for the amazing introduction. Dilpreet, over to you.
Hi, thanks, Dave. Hi, everyone. I'm joining from Naarm, also known as Melbourne. And before I introduce myself, I would like to pay my respects to the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. I'm a settler here. All migrapreneurs would most likely be. I am an independent journalist, and I am the founder of South Asian Today, which is Australia's first media startup for South Asian women and non-binary peoples. We produce and create, progressive content around politics, gender, race. They're mostly very spicy, so we're very controversial like that, and we are not at all apologetic about it. It's been a year since I started, and I have many dreams of making it big. And I'm very excited for having this conversation because, as we all know, a lot of migrapreneurs lead a very lonely journey. So it's very nice to be here. Thank you for having me. Thanks, Dave.
I love that. Thank you so much for the amazing introduction. Ellen, over to you. I think you're on mute, Ellen.
I don't have my You're on Mute t-shirt on. Apologies, everyone. My name is Alan Jones. Hopefully the nice one most of the time, not the nasty fascist one. And I'm a first-generation Australian, but of privileged descent. So my clan is Scottish. So it's been a few generations since they were oppressed. I'm coming to you from Gamaragal land of the Eora Nation, and I thank leaders of the Gamaragal people, past, present, and future. Yes, there's no treaty, and we need one now. I moved around a lot as a kid, and from country to country, and so I always felt like a new arrival each time my family moved. And so I'm used to being the odd one out, the one with the wrong accent, with the wrong hairstyle, the wrong clothes, and listening to the wrong music. And I think that's where my interest comes from. And I had an entrepreneurial, career-minded mother, who, of course, in the 60s and 70s, found it very hard for herself to get ahead. So I'm also always been interested in diversity as well. Now, as an angel investor, spending most of my time in tech startups, I just think it makes good business sense for anybody investing to be looking for opportunities that other investors miss. And all of those unconscious biases that exist in all of us, no matter our race, gender, and background, tend to make us miss opportunities that are staring at us right in the face. So I'm determined to pick up some of those opportunities as best as I can. I've been involved with Catalysr since before it was a thing. The Catalysr founders, Jake and Usman, came along and shadowed me for a while in my role as a mentor and investor in the StartMate Tech Accelerator program. And I now sit on the board of Catalysr and spend not nearly enough time, always late, driving Marlo crazy with the operations of Catalysr.
We're very fortunate to have you and the whole panel. The experience have so many things about migrants. So I'm sure the discussion is going to be really, really fruitful. So thank you so much for coming here. Let's dive into today's topic. What are your thoughts? So when you heard the first time that we are going to do this panel on why Australia needs more migrapreneurs, what were your thoughts? And what impact have you seen founders from migrant backgrounds make in Australian startup ecosystem? Do we want to just have the same flow? So Marjorie, Dilpreet, and Ellen?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, when I saw the panel discussion, my first thought really was like, I mean, we're all migrants, unless you're First Nation, right? But anyway, in terms of what impact, I mean, I can only speak about the over 80 refugee-owned businesses that we featured in Welcome Merchant. A lot of them hire people from their own communities and outside of their communities as well. So there's one, you have the economic contribution. There's also, I find that they become like a role model in their communities as well. So, they inspire others to start a business or to, like, I don't know, just go beyond like their own, like what they're comfortable with. So I can say that I've seen that happen a fair bit. Like I have, one guy in mind, for example, I absolutely love his story. He owns a, fairly new construction company down in Melbourne. And his story was he came to Australia when he was very, like, I think maybe in his primary school age, and he and his family stayed in a 3-bedroom apartment, but he was staying in a room with his parents and siblings. So that having a fairly difficult childhood really inspired him to, you know what, I want to run my own business one day and then give back to my community, and I don't want others to be going through what I'm going through as well. So I think it's just incredible. That's the kind of contribution they make to Australia.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Not the first part, because I came here when I was 24. And any international student who come here, they come from slightly privileged background. Otherwise, they can't afford to study abroad, especially from South Asia. That's what I can speak for. But yeah, just looking at the problems and wanting to solve is such a really good thought. And also they have different perspective to solve it as well. Yeah, what were your thoughts, Dilpreet? And yeah, what is the impact that you are making and you have seen other people make?
Yeah, I mean, the first time that I read why Australia needs more migrapreneurs, I honestly thought why not? I mean, it's 30% of Australian population is born overseas. We have about 643,000 international students enrolled just this year. Out of that, 32% are from South Asia alone. The Indian diaspora is the second highest tax-paying diaspora of the country. So if we are not seeing everyday people that we see in our day-to-day lives in the snapshot or the landscape of ecosystem, of the startup ecosystem in Australia, then that's not a true representation of the country as is, right? I think this idea that migrants don't know enough about Australia, because that's something I personally experienced when I came here. I was 22 turning 23, and I had worked in an international newsroom. I had done plenty of stuff, but somehow was not even enough for a small Melbourne radio station. So there's a lack of trust that really harms migrants and international students, because they have to prove something that they actually don't need to be proving, because your work experience should be enough. And I'm not saying that, just because I worked in some place else that I'm totally experienced to work in Australia. Absolutely not. But the fact that you're not even given a chance is something that a lot of international students and migrants have gone through a very similar experience. So when I started South Asian Today, I felt that distrust, even though I had done internships with Al Jazeera, with ABC, I had worked with The Conversation, I had done, a good amount of work in the journalism industry. And yet when I started my own media startup, there was a little bit like, what does she know? Who is she to, start telling a South Asian Australian story? So I think other than just the skills, other than just the experience, the biggest challenge that a lot of migrapreneurs face is the fact that, people don't trust them. And to build that trust, that's double the work that you're already putting in your business or in your idea, right? So you're working hard and you're working in multiple dimensions. But the biggest asset that migrapreneurs bring is, of course, their own lives, their own lived experiences, right? You and I were international students, and it's tough. It's tough being an international student, right? And I don't speak for everybody, but for majority of people who come from almost typically middle-class families, they kind of lead a very, very tough life.
Yeah.
So when we live that life, that kind of quote-unquote Australian life, then that's what we reflect, that reflects upon our work that we do later in life as well. So I guess to conclude, it's the experiences, it's the thoughts, it's the kind of life that we've lived that we bring into our businesses that really are an asset to the country. And to ignore that for a long period of time, it's actually a loss. It's actually kind of their loss, is how I feel about it. Yeah. 100%. Yes. Yeah.
I agree. No, I definitely relate to that, because I very rationally, I can understand that somebody who's not from here or is very, very new, they may not know a lot of things, but hopefully, all of our efforts is changing at least one step at a time. So yeah, over to you, Alan.
So my interest stems, it goes back a few years ago now. I guess when I was just frustrated about the Australian federal government's dog whistling, using migrants and refugees and asylum seekers as a means of getting other Australians paranoid and scared of people who look and sound different. And there's only so much that I can share on social media and make no difference at all before I get frustrated and angry. And so what excites me about Catalysr is we can take away one of the legs of the xenophobia if we can show that migrants aren't a net drain on economically or socially. So people are afraid that we bring people to our country and then they're a huge burden on society, because they're not productive in an economic sense. And so, obviously to me, the economic part of what somebody brings to society is only a tiny fraction of their importance. But if that's where we want to play, then I think we should point out, ignoring for a moment all of the massively successful migrants who've added so much economic value to Australia. Let's just take a look at the ones that we've received now or received recently. If we can show the rest of Australia that as an entrepreneur they can start a business which then employs other Australians, it's no longer a dialogue about whether or not we're just providing employment for that one migrant or one refugee family. It's now a question of, well, if we help that person get started in their own business really quickly, and then they employ 5 other Australians, one of those other 5 Australians might be my kid. And so I think there we can draw a line between Australians and who are worried about what's going to happen to their kids in the future, and say, well, what if they end up working for an innovative, exciting, interesting company which is export focused, so it's bringing value into Australia, and then we can with Catalysr we can show people how we can equip people with the skills and experience to become a successful entrepreneur in Australia. And then we can use those case studies to show the rest of Australia, and we can use that as part of our marketing mix to fight back against the xenophobia in Australian politics. So that's been a source of tremendous joy for me, because oftentimes it's actually really pretty simple. Like I love that one day Catalysr will have some alumni that have created $1 billion business, and between now and there'll be a few that will be $50 and $100 million businesses. Just in economic terms, that will make a huge difference to the Australian economy. But in the very near term, in 3 to 5 years, we've created businesses that employ 5 to 10 Australians, and that has massive economic benefits to the nation. So that's really my thing. I'm an investor. I do care about economic benefits. There's so much more to what migrants bring to Australia. But even if we're just looking at that, then hey, if it's a business that employs your son or daughter one day, then isn't that a net good thing for Australia?
Absolutely. No, I love that. And you're right, like looking at it from that perspective. Very recently, I had come across this stat which says that because of international students come to Australia, they create over 250,000 jobs in Australia. And this is a stat which just blew my mind, because nobody talks about 250,000 jobs every year just because you're letting in migrants in Australia. And that is just about like changing the perspective of everybody. And they have different perspective because they don't have all the knowledge. But
and I think, sorry, and not to interrupt, but I will anyway. Yeah. And I think we've seen in the employment figures in Victoria in the last couple of months, very clear example of what happens when we stop migration. The economic effect of stopping migration in Australia due to lockdown. Yeah. That has been the single biggest contributor to the massive impact on unemployment figures in that state.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why I think even the narration from the government I've seen change slightly, and they're just addressing migrants, international students, refugees a lot more, even in the press now, which I think is a good change. But as a migrapreneur myself, what I want to move towards is like the struggles that specifically migrapreneurs face, that you may have come across, that people around you, migrapreneurs around you face. So that is what I'm going to talk about. I know that you a little bit mentioned about it, but what do you think? So I'm sure a lot of people in the audience would be like, they want to start a business, but they are new here. So the best thing is just to get a job. I myself have thought about it so many times. Like, maybe I just get a job, make like $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year, and that's so much better. But still, we want to solve some problems. So in that case, what would be your advice? What are the things that people like me can do?
First?
Yeah.
Okay, like this in order, sure. So, well, again, I'm speaking about the refugee and asylum seeker entrepreneurs. Yeah. They face they have different barriers anyway to what a normal migrant would face. I mean, for them, no one wants to give them a job, so often they start a business. It's the opposite, right? And the barriers they face when it comes to starting a business, so they lack financial support. If to expand on that, they kind of, in some cases, they can't apply for a loan because they have no financial history. There's a language barrier for some of them too. There's a technological barrier, which a lot of the welcome merchant entrepreneurs face. Just sometimes it could be as simple as you just assume they would have a computer. Some of them don't.
have a computer or even access to Wi-Fi. So these are things that we take for granted. And then with the small businesses, like what Welcome Merchant does is we don't help them start a business from scratch. So we feature those that are already established, but I find that they remain small because they don't know how to market themselves beyond what they're already doing, or they don't know where to even begin when it comes to social media marketing. So these are the barriers that a lot of them faces. And did you ask how they can overcome that? Or just
Yeah, no, that's exactly. So I'm really glad you covered some of the problems that refugees and asylum seekers face, because those are a lot of those stories that, for example, I wouldn't know, because I don't have a lot of refugees or asylum seekers in my network. So really good thing that you covered that. But what would be your advice for those people who even want to start? Just want to start, just want to get started, do something, they have a problem in their head and a solution, or just want to validate? What would be your advice for them?
So I find a lot of them, they turn to their own community. So they for advice, basically. Some of them have got, for example, a friend helped them set up a website, but the problem is they don't know how to get back into that website if they lose touch with their friend, for example, right? So they do turn to their own community. They're very resourceful. So they'll find solutions. They will.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. No, definitely. That was very helpful. Dilpreet, you are not very, but like it's been a year or 2 years that you have been, started your journey. So what are the struggles that you faced? And do you just think that, getting a job is a lot easier than starting a startup?
I don't think getting a job is, as easy as they say for international students, especially people who graduate, even from big universities. I'll give you an example. I graduated from Melbourne University in 2019, and I did my master's in journalism. And I was super excited to then apply for cadetships and traineeships, just like all my fellow students would. But I wasn't allowed because I am not a PR and I am not a citizen. So even a cadetship or a traineeship, an international student is not allowed to, qualify for, even though you've done the exact same masters, and mind you, have paid, double the fees. And mind you, a lot of people actually take out loans. So this idea that you must be a king or queen back home, that you have so much money to give abroad, is also a myth. We take out loans. I'm going to be paying back my loan for the next decade. So these barriers and this gatekeeping starts from the get-go. It's between job and a business. I think both are, difficult choices to make. And I'm a single independent woman, so I don't have the pressures of family. But, young parents who come to Australia, I would never blame them for not starting a business and just trying to get a job to feed their families, right? You can't really judge people for their choices. But coming back to the barriers, look at the granting. There are hardly any grants for people who are not PR or citizenship. I haven't been able to procure a single government grant only because I'm not a PR or a citizen, but I pay taxes in this country. I live in this country. I'm a resident for tax purposes, and yet I'm not eligible for grants, right? So there's a huge financial gap that founders face, and especially people who are not from Australia or are not Australian, whatever, on paper. So in these situations, what to do? So what I did, I joined accelerator programs. I started creating my own network because, as I talked about trust and distrust before, it's also really hard to form a community. These are just my experiences. Okay, I'm not speaking on anybody's behalf. I don't have any qualification to do that also. But it's true that because migrants are fighting for the same grants, they are fighting for the same applications, they are fighting for the same leftovers that the government has for them, that there's a huge competitive spirit. So what is community really, when the community itself is fighting for, many little things? So there's a lot of competition actually, and less collaboration, which is a huge, problem, and it can actually discourage you even more, because what we tell people of color, what we tell women, what we tell gender diverse people all the time is that, oh, you've got a community, stick together. But that community is fighting for 2 grants in a year.
Right.
Right? So this is actually a big conversation beyond people who look like me, people who have my same experiences. Actually, no. People who can, Australians who can support independent businesses, it's actually, we need to be looking at them. Because that's where the support is going to come from. We can't eat each other alive for $2,000 annually.
Yeah.
So what I started doing was I joined accelerator programs. I made my own community, made my own network. When I started South Asian Today, it was an open platform. So my main purpose was to make sure that South Asian creatives and writers who come from refugee backgrounds, who come from migrant backgrounds, who come from war-torn countries, people who are gender diverse, people who've had religious minority as a background, to be able to write their stories. That was the main and continues to be the main core of South Asian Today. And I didn't know if it was going to work, Dave. I had no idea. But, the very first day that I got a pitch, I was like, oh, somebody pitched to me.
Yeah.
And,
yeah,
it feels good because what you're trying to do, the purpose of your business, when you drop a seed and someone picks it up, it does feel good. It's a long process and I don't have one answer, but I think if you are going to go down this road, I would say, maybe we are not in that privilege of a position that we can just give up a job and start a business. I can't do that. I need to have a day job so I can run South Asian Today. So it's just a tip from me to not, be financially secure because, honey, you're going to be deported if you don't pay your taxes. I don't know what to tell you. So, you need to be in a safe position in order to do your business, especially as a migrant. And, make your own connections. I feel like make your own community is how I'll end it, and not rely on others, because you never know what the other person is going through and they might be actually competing you, to be honest. That's just the bitter truth. So start somewhere, but always have your purpose, why you started something, and make your own connections.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like the point of just start somewhere, because there are a couple of things. Number one is that, there are X number of jobs that we can apply and X number of jobs that we cannot apply. Unless you have, even for like certain jobs, it's just for citizens, certain job is just for permanent residents. And if it's defense job, it makes sense, right? Because if, a lot of that might, risks involved. But there are jobs that, even IT jobs, certain companies just do not hire. Now, that is one side of the problem. And second side of the problem is that, these grants, for example, for the longest time, I didn't even know that we can apply for these grants or where to look for these grants, or, so I think knowledge is one thing that is like really important. And then there is a third problem that a lot of migrants face, those people who do not come on permanent residency. So those migrants or refugees face is that, you're just not going to qualify for everything that is out there. So, sometimes you have to start a business, but that you're going to find difficulties there. For example, me, I had to have a job in marketing in order to qualify for permanent residency. So that's why you cannot leave a job. So there are definitely things out there, but I think one thing that I would take away from everything has a problem. And I consider myself like very privileged position as well, because we can speak English and living very comfortably, also a male, which like upbringing, you just get certain things. But one thing that I like about both the answers that you gave was that there's so many things that we don't know. For example, the struggles that a minority group or women or somebody who's a refugee would go through. It's even not fair to expect that Australians, people who are born here, would know that, and I think the responsibility is in our hand, that I put out stories for international students, for example, or Catalysr put out stories for migrants who are struggling to start a business or starting a business, so that other people get to know. Because otherwise, how would I know what a brown female feels when it's not safe? It's just, I can listen to stories, but it's really hard for me because I'm not in that position. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Over to you, Ellen. What are some of the stories that you have come across, and what would be some of the solutions for migrants? How do we, solve it?
Well, first of all, I'm the token Anglo on the panel tonight, so I'm not going to pretend for a moment to understand, or speak on behalf of my fellow Australians that don't benefit from the same privileges as I do. And so, that would not be appropriate. But I guess I can look through an Anglo-Australian's eyes, and a cis white male's eyes, and I'm not actually a boomer. I'm just on the cusp of being a boomer. I'm just 3 days into being Generation X, thank God. Um, but yeah, so with all of that, sitting on the other side of that, for all of my life, I can perhaps say that um, you know, one thing to keep in mind, I think, is that is the importance of exposure. So with repeated exposure, we all get used to the foreign and the different. And so at initial introduction, initial exposure, many Australians are going to be, reluctant or shy or shut down or even, outright hostile. And it is unfair to ask migrant Australians to persist, to push through that. You don't deserve that from them. You haven't earned it. But if you do, in my experience, eventually most Australians open up gradually over time. So um, another important thing I think is that every interaction in society, in business, in employment is an exchange of value. And so um, uh, our migrant Australians need help, our refugee Australians need help, our asylum seeker Australians need help, and there's a large proportion of Australia who would just wish that they weren't seeking help. So anywhere we can see an opportunity, just in the smallest way, just to offer something first, rather than seeking to be the recipient of something first. Catches them off guard, because a lot of the time they're really not expecting us to be capable of offering something first, and that might be something as simple as bringing somebody's garbage bins back in from the street after they've been collected, or offering to walk their dog or feed their cat while they're away, or obviously initially, we may get rebuffed by that, or we may be treated with suspicion. But if we have the resilience to continue to offer that, I believe that the most Australians will break down. And then the opportunity to break bread, to share food, to talk about, I don't care about sport, but pretending to be interested in somebody's sports team. I think we can make slow, frustratingly slow, but gradual progress in those areas.
Yeah.
When we pitch, professionally, when we pitch ourselves as being qualified, and having X experience and so on, yes, that's true. But we will still get marginalized. We will still get looked over for the opportunities that are open. When I meet people like Marjorie and Dilpreet, and yourself, Dev, who show us, here's actually my work. If you're not going to actually offer me employment, I'm just going to do an N1 around you and freelance or work on spec, or and again, that's not fair. Shouldn't have to do that. It's frustrating, and the first couple of times you do it, you're not going to get taken up. But it's a thing. It can be done with and so the rest of us, I think, play an important role in how we support people who are taking on that, who are having a go, even though there are no offers of help or assistance, and the first few times you get rebuffed. I think the rest of us need to be there for each other and say, it's hard to keep doing this, but I believe in you, and I think if you persist, and if you want to show me your work, I'd be happy to give you my my feedback on it. Just keep slugging, and I think you can get there.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, that's a really good segue to one of the questions that we have received in the chat from Kritika. And Kritika has asked, how do you manage to be resilient mentally when you face inequality due to your ethnic background? Yeah, so just on that note, how would you suggest we just be resilient? First thing is obviously like we have to keep trying. That obviously that's one thing, but sometimes it's just hard. It like first thing I personally think the first thing is to just accept that it's not going to be easy. You're taking a different path. But what are some of the tips that you guys have? How do we become more resilient? Yeah, Mark.
I'll go first. Well, I mean, when you think of the word refugee, people seeking asylum, people tend to associate that with resilience. And they are, but I tell you what, they're tired of being resilient. They just want to thrive. They just want to be given the opportunity to thrive. Or how do they manage? I mean, they just do, they have to.
Yeah.
Be strong. I was recently talking to a restaurateur in Sydney that's just opened up last week. So the past 3 months was incredibly, incredibly hard on him because he's in one of the harder, like he's in Southwest Sydney, Darra country. So, barely got any foot traffic as well. So, and takeaway was very, very low business. But yeah, I mean, I checked in on him every week anyway.
Yeah.
As much as I could on him and the others, and he has family support there for him. So that's how we got through. And I asked him how his first week of reopening has gone. He said it's still very quiet. To the point he said that he doesn't know if there's anyone left in Sydney. It's because of the area that he's in. So people have gone through just 4 months of harsh lockdown rules. So there's a lot of PTSD there, right? So I think it's a while for the local community to come out anyway and support him in his business. But anyway, they just get through it. Family support, I think.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. What do you think, Dilpreet?
I don't know. I have a funny relationship with the word resilience, as Marjorie has already put it. I think it was my first year in Melbourne, and everyone everyone used this word in a very positive way. And I completely got it, that of course we have to be strong, we have to be resilient, we have to face the challenges. But I think in the last couple of years, I've changed, and I feel like I don't have to be resilient. And why am I asked to be resilient? And why is the onus on me to reject when things that are to be rejected shouldn't be put out in the first place? And why is it my responsibility to sort of fight something that I didn't create in the first place? I didn't create, like, I don't know, racism. I didn't create sexism, and suddenly it's on me to somehow reject it. So I completely get that there is an idea of empowerment that, when you're at the lowest, you pick it up and you feel powerful in that. And there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's a very, very human experience. I don't think there's any other human experience more human than this, right? To pick yourself up and move on. But at the same time, I think when we make ourselves to be people who need to be resilient, we kind of lose ourselves, is how I would put it, because we are so busy trying to fight something that quite honestly is not often even our problem, right? So I'm not sure what my answer to how I continue being resilient is, but I literally just threw myself into work that I enjoyed. I honestly did that. Last year I wanted to do South Asian Today. I was fed up of not seeing South Asian stories on the Australian mainstream media. I was actually fed up of being rejected. How do you speak English so well? Blah, blah, blah. Everyone's heard the same old stories, right? They've become boring now. And I just opened something of my own, and the moment I did it, people reached out to me, I reached out to people. It was super organic. And once you find something that you really want to do, that is kind of your life's purpose, trust me, you'll forget how to be resilient, because you're creating something. And I think we just need to find a balance between, am I going to be busy being resilient, or am I going to be busy creating? And I say this with all my love, because trust me, I spent 20 years of my life being resilient, and I resent that person, because I was too busy fighting and, didn't take care of myself. And I think we need to move beyond this idea that I'm a strong Indian brown woman, I'm resilient. I'm a woman, I have got my experiences, I want to create something, I want to make mistakes, I want to learn, I want to unlearn. There's so many things in the world that are not my experience, so much of it is. And I kind of want to be busy working.
I like that. I think one
Guru Dilpreet Kaur, everyone, straight from India.
Straight from India. I love that. I think one takeaway that I think I would just like to highlight there is that, like, not in this words, but what you highlighted was that find your why. Like, once you find your why, that just helps you. Byproduct is resilience because you have found your why, right? So a lot of times we just have to ask, it's like, why do you wake up in the morning? Like, what do you really want to do? And that is your why. Like, this is your startup, but what do you really want to do? And when we see our North Star, and then it's like, okay, that's why I am resilient. And then being resilient, probably, at least that is for me, which is like, oh no, but what do I really want to do? And even like, I may have a different, like, this is what I tell myself, because my grandfather was a freedom fighter. So like, that thing is just like inbuilt, which is like, oh, this is not your problem, but you're the one to solve it. That's it. You're the one to get up in the morning and make sure that, like, let's say, like, migrants have a better life, and that's why Catalysr, like, migrants can start businesses, that's why Catalysr, stuff like that. So I think North Star is something that I personally look up to, and which is like, that's how it becomes easier for me personally to be resilient. Ellen, would you like to add something? I know you already covered on resilience, but would you like to add something there?
I just want to congratulate Dilpreet on the advice that she just gave and the way she described her own experience. Thank you. I love that. Thank you, Guru. Look, again, I'm the token white man. So what have I got to add? But I would say, look, Australian culture, white Australian Anglo culture is slow. It's slow compared to so many other cultures around the world, and business culture and culture in general in South Asia is always cholo, all the time, right? And so I think sometimes, I think it's hard to adapt to that here, just the frustration and the slow pace of anything here. And so, I think maybe that's one thing that we can practice self-care about, is not to beat ourselves up that we can't make Australia move faster than it currently does. We're one person, or maybe we're a team of people, or maybe we're a family. That's, it's bigger than all of us. So, learn to move at Australia time rather than cholo time. And the other things, that I think are important is don't attempt this alone. Find a tribe, find a community. Went along to a beautiful dinner hosted by a welcome merchant, and it's so wonderful to be part of that tribe and meet new faces and connect, with more people. The more diversity in my tribe, the stronger I become. And Australia can't beat us all down at once. If there's 5 of us, even better. If there's 10 of us, even better. If there's 30 of us, some of us, one of us in that tribe of 30 today has had a good day, and the rest of us can take courage from that, and top up our resilience battery, for another day of slog maybe. Then the other thing I think is important, is to practice, some basic self-care. To not binge on our phones content, and to spend time face to face with real people, as well as all the Zoom calls. And to get a little bit of exercise, and within the budget that we have, to eat as healthily as we can. Exercise doesn't have to cost any more than not exercising, and eating healthily doesn't have to cost any more than eating unhealthily. It just takes a little bit of discipline, and I know that subtracts from our resilience battery as well. But share that load. Cook a meal with some members of your tribe rather than eating alone. And share that meal, on a picnic blanket in a park, and then you're hitting, multiple good things for your body and mind at the same time. That's all I've got.
Yeah, love that so much. Actually, somebody was recently asking me about Catalysr, and the reason why I'm talking about Catalysr is, a lot of time that I spent working with migrants and everything, was that what do you love the most about? And this connects with what Ellen said, and also with the resilience thing, is just the community. It's just having like-minded people who may have shared a similar experience or similar upbringing, or just similar problems that they are facing. May not be anything similar, but the problems are similar. It just helps so much, which is like, oh, like I'm not alone. And like, there's so many people that are doing this thing. I'm very conscious of time, and I wanted to ask these two questions. First is that who is your favorite migrapreneur, or which is your favorite migrapreneur-led startup?
Well, okay, so I can't choose a favorite out of the 80 plus welcome mission entrepreneurs. That would be unfair. But my favorite one at the moment, for the past year, is Melanie Perkins, who is the co-founder of Canva, because she is a Filipino Australian like me.
Wow.
And is now, will hopefully beat, what's her name, Gina Reinhardt, as the just richest woman. But I also admire the fact that Canva is very keen to give back to the community. So I know they've just started a foundation recently where they pledged to give a 30% stake company, which is valued at US $12 billion. And that will be invested back into organizations that aim to eliminate extreme poverty. So she's a favorite migrapreneur.
Yeah, she's right up there. What about you, Dipri?
Yes, I was going to give a shout out, not that she needs it, to Melanie Perkins as well. She comes from a very rich Filipino, Malaysian, Sri Lankan descent, and she's done amazing work. Like, for independent journalists like me, creatives like me, there's not a single day that I can go by without Canva. It's absolutely impossible. It's changed my life. So, she's created a huge amount of change, and it's amazing to see her journey. Obviously, I can't pick one. I mean, there's Creative Cooperative run by Priyanka Ashraf. She comes from a Bangladeshi origin, and she's creating real groundwork change where she's bridging the gap between women of color and employment, and making sure that all the paid employees, are women of color, and that's fantastic. It's great. There's Shanti Murugan. She's the head of campaign and strategy at Adore Beauty, and she's trying to change how every shade, tone, skin color deserves a basic foundation. So, she's trying to change things in the beauty industry. So there are tons of people. And it's fantastic. When you look at people of color, and when you look at migrant people, when you look at people from diverse linguistic backgrounds come to Australia, change it for the better. It's absolutely amazing. And welcome Merchant, of course, Marjorie, huge shout out as well.
Love that. Well, all of the names that you mentioned are doing amazing work. In fact, Priyanka is also Catalysr alumni. So yeah, thanks for sharing all of this. Over to you, Ellen.
So I'm a tech startup investor, right? So I'm always going to favor the tech startups in the community that I know. And Melanie's incredible. Everybody knows who she is. But I'm gonna call out another founder and another startup, another Catalysr alumni. So I suppose that's no surprise, but Sebastian Chowie and the team from Aralula. So Seb's from an Arabic, I think, Lebanese Christian background, I think, but yeah, Seb's been through the same challenging migrant experience as many of our founders. And Alula is doing incredibly ambitious work. So they are democratizing satellite imagery so that you don't have to be a national science organization or a three-letter acronym US defense agency or a huge multinational corporation to be able to use satellite imagery. So one of Alula's first customers was Blacktown City Council, helping them identify places where people had been illegally dumping rubbish. So there's no way we would have been able to use satellite imagery to solve a problem as down to earth as that even just 5 years ago, and Alula is making that happen. At the same time, that the business now has 6 employees, and it has investment capital. It's been through a number of accelerator programs other than Catalysr since then, and the company continues to thrive. So there we are on the world stage in the space race with a migrant-founded business that came right from our tribe, right from our community.
Yeah, love that. Love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. To our audience, if you guys have any question, we have 7 more minutes, 6 more minutes now, that we can cover and ask our panelists. I wanted to talk about our last question, and that was, what would be one takeaway us, as in our audience, can take away today? How can we help or support migrant entrepreneurs? What are some actual actions that I can take today to help migrant entrepreneurs?
Well,
To follow Welcome Merchant, those are social media channels. So we have, as I've mentioned, we have an online directory. There's over 80 businesses already listed and social enterprises listed on there from across Australia. Admittedly, most of them are in Sydney and Melbourne, but we're working on that. We're still trying to, get more contacts in the other states. But yeah, like if you need a tradie or you want to go to a restaurant, especially now that Sydney and Melbourne are reopening, then just jump online, jump on welcomemerchant.com and have a look what's on there. Pretty soon we will be going back to events, as Alan has mentioned. So you got me hungry, like think of food. Oh, I miss those events. So it's been hard for us anyway in Sydney because we haven't been able to run events these past 3-4 months, but we'll be back to running curated events again next February and hoping to expand them to other states. But we're also selling goodie bags. So I need to plug the goodie bags. So we partnered with about 5 refugee-powered businesses. So there's Akira Grateful, which is a skincare product, and Russia Syrian Kitchen. We're selling their mahmouls, which is like Syrian cookies as part of the goodie bags. And there's also reusable mask and ginger tonics in there. So for your next birthday present for someone, or Christmas is around the corner, if you celebrate Christmas, then buy goodie bags.
Amazing. Well, I love that. I love that. That is actual action point. I'm just like big fan of action points. It's like, this is what I can do today. Awesome. Or do you, Dilpreet?
Yes, I'll only speak from the media perspective because that's my forte. It's pretty simple. If you are reading a story that is written by a South Asian journalist, see where it's written, who's published it, and support that publication. It's really not, rocket science. I think one thing that I learned at South Asian today was some of our posts did really well. Some of our articles did really, really well. People were like, oh my God, I've never talked about caste in Australia. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is the oldest thing we have. How come? And people are, consuming diverse journalism. But what's really missing is, I'll come back to monetary support, right? 10 of our articles are read by, say, 5,000 people. My PayPal has $20. So I think that there's a huge gap between not supporting publications who are going out of their way to, not out of their way, sorry, that's the wrong way to put it, but for me, it was going out of my way, right? Channelizing all that I had. Yeah. To reach out to writers, to edit, to, sometimes I'm working till 4 a.m. on a story. So if you're reading, diverse race, gendered journalism, consider actually donating that publication, right? So last month we opened our own shop where we are selling products made by South Asian artists, and every product that you buy from our shop directly helps us publish more content. So it's really, it's not one answer fit all sort of situation. It's really about if you are consuming something that someone has made out of lots of labor and love and, you know, fighting a lot of challenges, then it's only fair for you to support that. I find that, you know, I find that very logical. I don't know why, because I do that. If I read something, I'm like, oh, wow, I read like 5 articles on this website at least a month. I should give them at least $5 a month. Like, that's just a, you know, a generic response from me, which unfortunately is not a generic response. So coming back to media, if you're consuming media, I know there's a lot of it, but independent media startups, people who have just started, it's really tough. So if you actually want to support, rather than just, you know, talking about it, which is also great, an actual action point would be to pitch your stories, you know, tell your friends to get published who have not been published before. We are more than happy to help them, and to actually donate and help and buy stuff from artists. You know, those are some actual action points that I can talk about without sounding too commercial, because it is. Your support actually means, you know, but you know, your people support actually helps you function. It's just the truth. Yeah.
I love that. So the action point that I'm taking out of this is that when I read an article, I really like it. See who has written it. Doesn't matter who has written it. First thing, acknowledge and appreciate. If you cannot donate money, just write them an email. You know, just write them an email saying that, hey, great job. That's going to, when they are not resilient, that is what is going to help them. So that's number one. And number two, if you actually can donate, just like, you know, for a lot of people, fortunately, $5 or $10 wouldn't make a lot of difference. And the people receiving $5 or $10, it would make a lot of difference. So that's the action point.
Awesome. Bingo. I'm changing Guru Dilpreet to Gurudev. That's it. That's it.
Awesome. Over to you, Alan. Final thoughts.
I'd like to go first. Next time we do one of these panels, all the good ideas are already taken by time coming to me. And I am the white man. I'm used to going first. It's not fair. No, I'm just going to say, look, the social media algorithms are pretty simple to understand, right? The more people who like and share stuff, the more the algorithms serve that stuff to other people associated with those people. So it's pretty simple. If you can't afford to pay for the press journalism right now, if you can't afford to buy from Marjorie's retailers, brands, then do the next best thing that you can, and follow their content. You know, follow them on social media and big up their stuff. Share their stuff with the people that you're connected to. Because if enough of us do that, you know, often enough, then the algorithms pay attention to that and they share it with a broader audience. So you know, even with no money at all, we can make a difference. And then obviously, you know, what money you have, you know, spend it with your tribe. Spend it with your tribe.
Love that. Awesome. Well, I'm so pumped right now. Thank you so much for this amazing panel discussion and thoughts and sharing your experiences. Marlo has been sharing all the links. Thank you, Marlo, for doing that. You know, people can reach out and follow a lot sooner. And thank you, our panelists. Thank you for sharing your experiences and you know, enlightening us with a lot of things that we may not have known before. And thank you, our audience, for joining us. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dev.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, kitty.
I have to feed her now, so it's good timing.
Aww. Lovely to see you, Marjorie. Lovely to see you,
Likewise.
Alan. Yeah,
thank
you, Dave. You did a great job at hosting. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
See you guys.
That was fun. All right, bye all. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.